What's up, Trifecta alumni? Thank you so much for tuning back into our Alumni Spotlight series. My name is Nano Fori, and I have the pleasure of serving as your Alumni Affairs Chair. Today, we have a very special guest, a former Region 3 member, but also he served as our Region 3 HPLA Chair, and additionally, our National Academic Affairs Co-Chair. He is currently a PGY1 in psychiatry at UCLA. Y'all give it up for Dr. Preston Igwe.
Yes, sir. Hey, that doctor hit different. That was wild. The doctor hit different. Appreciate you. Thank you. What's up, Region 3?
Of course. Okay, so how we're going to do this, we're going to start off with some icebreaker questions, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty. So, okay. First question is, what is your dream travel destination?
Ooh, okay. Okay, that's a tough one because I got a list. I got about like 15 spots I'm trying to go to.
Okay.
My dream travel destination right now, I'll have to say something like Turks and Caicos. Ooh. That's something that's been on my list for a long time. I'm trying to do it right, you know. Okay. Get the right group and just do it big. So right now, something very tropical, be on a beach, you know, warm. That's what I got right now.
I love it. I love it. I'm taking mental notes for my own post-graduation trip. So Turks and Caicos. Okay. I like that. Okay. Next question. This is about food. So what is a food item that you would not eat under any circumstances? You're not eating it.
See, the thing about me, right? So I love food, you know what I'm saying? I love food so much. I always tell people I'll try anything once. But a food item I will not eat. So I like a lot of things, but I probably like the bugs, different types of like insects are not my jam, you know? So like things like, you know, in some places they eat like crickets or some other type of like exotic insects. Yeah, that's not for me.
Yeah, no. I would have to agree with you. Can't do crickets either. Okay, the very last one is, which one of your like top 3 favorite artists would you pay big money to go see live in concert?
Wow. Okay, I got the 2 off top just because. One, Rihanna, because that's my girl. You know, the recent news definitely did hurt me. It hit me deep. I wish her and ASAP well, but that was supposed to be me, you know, that was supposed to be me, but it's okay. I'm moving forward, you know, I'm healing and I'm pushing through. So one, my girl Drake, because, you know, he's the guy, you know, I know I'd have a great time at a Drake concert. I know so much of his music. And the last one, who I actually did pay big money to go see, Kendrick Lamar. Yeah.
Oh, man. Yes. Kendrick is my guy. That is my guy. I'm so glad you got to go see him.
That was probably one of my favorite concerts I've ever been to.
Yeah. Dang. That sounds so fun. Okay. Now that we've kind of gone into the icebreaker questions, let's kind of start from the beginning. I want to know kind of a little bit about your journey coming into medicine. So what would you say is the first thing that piqued your interest in medicine?
I would definitely say it was just, you know, my Nigerian upbringing for sure. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, growing up in a Nigerian household, traditional Nigerian household, there's only really so many jobs that your parents really want you to attempt to, you know, get into. So you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, a nurse, a pharmacist, an engineer. Mm-hmm. After that 5, you might have to start, you know, going against their wishes. So definitely growing up, you know, parents always pushed me to be excellent and to thrive academically. But it was actually my mom, she had a surgery when I was really young. I think I was probably still in elementary school. And just kind of like seeing her go through that and, you know, like the recovery process and just kind of being there for her and wishing, you know, some of her doctors had like better bedside manner or like were paying more attention to her and stuff. And I remember saying as like a really young kid, like, Mommy, don't worry, when I grow up, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to take care of you. And like, that's something that was really, you know, when I first committed myself to doing medicine.
Yeah, Yeah, I can definitely relate to just kind of having like a personal story as to why medicine was like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. Because that's one thing I have noticed about physicians, particularly with minority patients, we're kind of seen as an afterthought. Like there's not really any effort put forth. So um, we thank God that you've been able to make that dream a reality. Um, and speaking of like some of your more personal like aspects, like what are some of the extracurriculars that you might have done that kind of like fueled your passion into pursuing medicine?
So like in medical school or just
I'd
like
say before med school, before the application.
before the application? Okay, so like a lot of different stuff. So when I was in undergrad, I didn't do a whole lot of pre-med stuff, but one thing I did do, like I was pre-med, but in terms of extracurriculars, I did a summer program after my sophomore year called SMDP. I think they've since changed the name. But basically I spent 6 weeks at Duke doing like a program for pre-med students where we were taking like college level courses, but also taking a couple of like intro med school courses like anatomy, physiology, and living on like the med school campus. So getting to, see what that was like. And some of our like advisors in the program were med students. So that was like really one of the first times I was able to surround myself by other like-minded Black people who wanted to do medicine, because it's a program for like underrepresented students. So I'm like seeing all these Black people in college, and we're all pursuing the same dream. They gave us white coats and everything, so we feeling ourselves, and we're seeing the rigor of what med school can be like. So that was a really big thing of mine. But really, a lot of my extracurriculars in undergrad really just surrounded my interests. So I did like I was in like a gospel choir, step team. Like I was president of an organization for Black men that worked to like increase camaraderie and help our community in South Bend, Indiana. And so that was really one of the greatest organizations I was in, Black Student Association. But I did know that ultimately it all tied back to what I was looking for in life, which was a sense of community and giving back to my community and helping, Black and Brown communities succeed and thrive and live our best lives. And so that's something that I've taken with me into my medical practice.
That's awesome. And so I'm not fully familiar with the SMDP program, but I know that a lot of minority medical students in particular have trouble finding kind of someone who's been in their shoes before, or just kind of having some sort of covering over them when it comes to applying for med school. So how did you, if you had any issues, how did you navigate finding a like mentor throughout this process? I know you said you were surrounded by med students through that program, but did you know any other physicians at the time, or did you feel like you had to kind of work to see, okay, this is somebody I want to follow in their footsteps?
Yeah, honestly, it was really tough for me. I don't think I really had that because I'm a first generation college student. So, of course, first generation medical student. And so when I was pre-med, navigating that process was really difficult. I only heard about SMDP through, I think, some email that my college department sent out to people who were pre-meds and said we should look into this to apply. I applied last minute, like literally minutes before the deadline was about to be up, and by God's grace, I was fortunate enough to get accepted to the Duke site. But yeah, so even after the program, now I had like people who were like around my age and that were also trying to get into med school. But I still didn't really have a lot of mentors that were med students or doctors. I didn't really know anybody. So navigating that space was really tough. So I would say honestly, like there wasn't a whole lot. I did a whole lot of it by myself and my friends who were also trying to get it and make our dreams come true. So it would be just like leaning on them. When they would tell me about opportunities, I would tell them about opportunities. Thankfully, when I was graduating, I had pre-med advisors that were able to like, tell me, okay, this is the classes that you need to kind of like, make sure you maybe retake, or these are the classes that you did really well in. You should ask these professors for like letters of rec and stuff like that. So my pre-med advisors at Notre Dame definitely did help me out and put together like packet letter of recommendation. So otherwise, it wasn't really until I got into med school that I started, finding mentors that were senior med students and physicians.
Hmm. Thank you for sharing that. One thing that has been pretty prevalent in our conferences for SNMA is just working to increase, how do I say this? Just exposure and representation of Black physicians, Black medical students. And I'm going to be very honest, I did not know the statistics of Black physicians in the US until coming to medical school. And so I kind of want to know, how did learning of those statistics kind of change your drive or maybe add to your drive to pursue medicine?
Yeah, for sure. Like I was the same way. I didn't really know about the scarcity of Black physicians. Like I knew there wasn't a ton of Black physicians, but I didn't really know the actual numbers until I got into medical school. And when I was in medical school, that was around the time the AAMC came out with that report talking about like the epidemic of Black men in med school, how there were fewer Black men in med school in like 2000, I think it was like 2018, 2019, than in the 1970s. And like, oh, where are the Black men? So, but also, Black women as well, just Black people in general. And so learning like, how much of a rarity we are in medicine really just intensified my drive because, soon after there were other reports coming out that, proved that patients from underrepresented backgrounds have better health outcomes when they're taken care of by physicians from a similar background, right? So we're very necessary, like we're a huge part of our patients' health. And just by being ourselves, just by being there, existing, taking care of them, we're already helping. So, and like I said, I came into med school already with that drive to take care of underrepresented communities and, especially the Black community and really help out. So that just pushed me to go harder.
Yeah, I can definitely relate with that. Okay, so you're in your journey, like now you're in medical school and you're kind of studying for exams, learning how to best study for yourself. A lot of people have trouble when it comes to board exam prep or even just sitting down to study for the MCAT. That was, wow, Jesus, like it was bad. It was really hard. So do you have any like tips for those people who are watching on like some of the things that you felt like were a game changer for you when it came to studying for exams?
Yeah, for sure. I do want to first start by saying I was not like the prototypical med student. Like I was not the person getting all A's in their classes, acing all the exams. Like you can ask my friends with me at UTMB, like coming up in the beginning, I was low key like, a little bit reckless. I think I was still new to the idea of what it meant to be in med school. It let me know that like, honestly, high school, college, I was a good student, but really I was getting by off, grace as well, because like, studying in med school was a completely different ballgame. I had never experienced the type of rigor before. And for me, the beginning was tough because I was trying to study like all the other people I saw, right? So I was trying to read the same textbooks and do the same stuff, and it just wasn't working for me. And so I think the biggest thing that helped me was realizing like, yo, you don't have to do things like everybody else does it. Figure out how you best study and absorb information and just do that, even if you're the only one doing it that way. Just figure out your own lane and what works best for you and just, run your own race. So once that really clicked for me, I was like, okay, bet, how do I learn? And for me, textbooks just wasn't it. Like, I couldn't learn from a textbook. I had to learn from watching videos, having other people like teach me things so I could hear it. And that stuck better with me. Drawing out like diagrams and stuff. So I started doing that, and that helps a lot with my coursework. Now, when it comes to the board exams, you're right. A lot of us who are first generation, who are Black, we tend not to do as well on these board exams because they're inherently racist, one, and they're really set up for people who have the resources to like pay for like study materials and for courses to do well. So we have to work even harder. And I think what really worked for me was having those mentors who had come, before me and say, okay, this is what you got to do. You got to do UWorld. Like UWorld really is the GOAT. Like for me, I just hit UWorld hard, right? And the thing about UWorld, and I have to go into a little bit about it because it's so important, is that don't look at it as an assessment tool. Look at it as a textbook. Like UWorld is my textbook in the sense of you just do it to learn. Don't try and say, oh, I'm trying to assess myself, because UWorld is ruthless. It doesn't care about your feelings.
It
So
doesn't.
it's really teach. So UWorld for show, watching pathoma videos, physio. Tried to do the first aid thing, but like I said, really couldn't study from it. So I just mostly used it as like a reference resource. And when I just really committed the time to doing that, my scores improved. But also find yourself a tribe, man, like a community that you can lean on and go through that process with. Because when you're trying to do it alone, it becomes very isolating and it can be really bad for your mental health. So definitely get a good group of people that you can go through it with.
Those are great gems. I hope the people watching took copious notes, because it's important. It's important to kind of hear from different people how like they best studied. So, you never know, some tip might work best for you, it might not, but it's good to hear these options. Okay, so now we're kind of past board exams. We're thinking about residency. And one thing that's been very like interesting and great to see is how so many people are taking their mental health and making it more of a priority. Especially minority people are making it more of a priority. And so I want to know for you, what was it, whether it was on rotations or maybe outside of rotations, what was it that really kind of let like a light bulb go off in your head? Like, yeah, psychiatry is where I feel like I would be doing the most good in medicine.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, it actually happened even before my rotations. After my first year in med school, I did a preceptorship at UTMB with the psych department. What's really special about UTMB is we have one of the few pediatric burn centers, like, in our part of the United States. So it's like a really prestigious institution, Shriners, and kids from all over get flown there, but especially a lot of kids from Mexico. Like people who just had traumatic burn injuries in Mexico get flown to Shriners to have like their surgeries. And what was really dope about that preceptorship is that I was able to work with an interdisciplinary team of trauma surgeons, clinical psychologists, and a psychiatrist, Dr. Meyer, and who are all working together as a team to really treat these patients and do what's best for them. So we weren't just worried about like, how with their burn injuries, their like metabolism is faster now, so we have to worry about the nutrition and make sure that we're doing proper skin grafts. We were also worried about their mental health. Like we were worried about like PTSD and anxiety and like flashbacks, nightmares, all that stuff. So we would do these interviews and therapy, prescribe medications, and we'd also follow them longitudinally. So like after they've had their surgeries, they've healed enough to like be integrated back into their homes and their schools. After some time, we would have them come back to Shriners and check on them. Like, hey, how's it going? Are you back in school? How's that working for you? Are you still having nightmares? And then also like, are you being bullied? Stuff like that. Because, kids can be mean, especially when you look different. So just seeing that and how important like the mental aspect of treating these kids was super interesting to me. And it also showed me how flexible and diverse a specialty like psychiatry is, that you can do really interesting things like this. So from there, I joined the student psychiatry interest group, went on my rotations, tried to keep an open mind, but psych definitely won the day. That was my favorite rotation. And that really confirmed for me that like, psychiatry is what I was meant to do. And one other thing, like being a Black man in medicine, I always was searching for like, where can I make the most impact, right? What specialty really needs more Black men in it that I can really be that representation? Soon realized it was all of them, because we just ain't that many of us, right? So no matter what specialty I chose, I'd be making a difference just by being me and being there. But then especially with psychiatry, there's not a lot of Black men that go into psychiatry. And as a result, I think also it's hard for Black men to look for psychiatrists and want to get, mental health care because they don't see anybody that looks like them. So I knew I'd be making a big difference in that regard as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a really good transition into another question, which is kind of concerning advocating for your patients of color. I know there was a post that was like kind of a copy of a tweet that you had made talking about a patient encounter on one of your rotations. And you explained how this patient had never seen a Black physician before at the VA. And so can you kind of walk us through, for those who didn't see the post, walk us through that patient encounter?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So that was one of the best days of residency, honestly, because it just really confirmed that I was in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. And so, just like any other day, taking care of my patients, primary care at the VA, so at the VA that I work at, the doctors go and get the patients themselves from the waiting room.
Mm-hmm.
So I see my patient's name, like, all right, bet, go to the waiting room to grab them. And so, I'm looking around, I see a guy, I think it's him. So I say his name, and he looks up and looks at me. And I'm like, yo, my name is Dr. Igwe. I'm going to be taking care of you today. Follow me into the exam room. And my guy doesn't move. Like, he's just there, still stuck. And I'm like, I got the wrong person. So I'm like, Mr. So-and-so? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, that's you? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, I'm Dr. Igwe. I'm going to be your doctor today. He was like, okay. And I was like, all right, so can we go to the exam room? And he was like, okay, you lead the way. So I'm like, he's still giving me this really weird look. I don't know what's going on, but we just gonna keep going. So we get into the exam room, and he's still kind of eyeing me a little oddly, and I'm like, okay, we gotta address this. So I say, just have to ask, is something wrong? You're giving me like this really strange look. What is that about? And he was like, are we being recorded? And I was like, nah, no. We're not being recorded. And he was like, man, you are the first Black doctor I've seen here at the VA. Wow. Like, I've never been taken care of by a Black physician before. I see plenty of Black people around the place, as clerks and as custodians, security, but never a physician. You're my first one. And that was such a profound moment for me, because, like, wow, what a privilege. What a privilege that is to take care of this man who, in his 70s, a veteran, served this country, and then coming back had to, go through Jim Crow, the civil rights movement, all that stuff, and now at this age, he's being taken care of by a Black physician for the first time, and seeing what it really meant to him. So I was thinking what an honor this is. And I'm like, dang, okay, now I gotta be on game. I can't mess this up because this might be it for him. If I'm his first one, I gotta do it. I gotta do right. Mm-hmm. And so, that also is a little bit sense of pressure there, if I'm gonna be honest. But it went well. It went really well. And then what made it even better was, we finished the visit, right? And since it's residency, you still have to staff with an attending physician. Mm-hmm. So, my attending comes in, I'm explaining the case, boom, 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 boom. The attending is like telling the patient the final plan. And all right, cool. Attending is walking out. My patient grabs him and says, 1 second. Y'all need to keep him. He's pointing at me. Yeah, y'all need to keep him. And I'm like, all right. And he's like, okay, yeah, for sure. And he was like, nah, like, you need to keep him because he's the first doctor I've ever had that looks like him. And hearing him say those words directly to my attending, so my supervising physician, mm-hmm. was just, it meant the world. And so my attending acknowledged that and acknowledged how, historically, UCLA, like many institutions, hasn't done very well at, recruiting and retaining Black residents, and how they're, they're working to be better, which they are. And they had every intention of making sure that I succeed and hoping to keep me on after. So, and then that was it. That was just, a great day, a great moment.
Oh man, I love to hear stories like that. It's a full circle moment and really a manifestation of what our ancestors truly prayed for. Like, this is like the manifestation of those prayers coming into real life. And so I love hearing stories like that. It's really inspiring, and I hope it's inspiring to those that are watching. Okay, so moving on to kind of like community service and mentorship, what are some of the ways that you have been or are wanting to be more involved in the community that you're serving, or be more of a mentor to young Black pre-med students or Black medical students?
Definitely. So that's something that is near and dear to my heart, because as we spoke about before, when I was coming up in it, I didn't really have a lot of mentors. I barely had any in the beginning until I got to medical school. So the pre-med process was really tough. So when as soon as I got to medical school, I knew mentorship was going to be big for me. So I literally, from like my first year, I already had pre-meds that I was talking to and telling them about SMDP and the classes they need to take by this time, how to get ready for the MCAT. As I went through UTMB, just got more and more pre-med mentees, that I was following up with. And honestly, there's no better feeling than when one of your pre-med mentees tells you that they got into medical school.
Yes.
And I've had those moments several times, and I'm so grateful for that, and I'm so happy for all of them. So then, once I got, into SNMA, of course, it became even easier, working with students that are in MAPS, and that was big for me. And then now at UCLA, I'm like, okay, how can I continue doing that? So I have my own mentees. I'm getting more, but also trying to stay involved with SNMA as a resident. I think, when I was really on the board, and even before I was on the board, a lot of times we think SNMA is mostly just for MAP students and medical students, but residents and attendings can also be part of the organization and be influential in the organization and give back. So that's something I'm going to try and do as well. And specifically at UCLA, we this is the first year we have our minority house staff organization, which is an organization that was created to, one, increase camaraderie between residents of color. A lot of us are first gen from underrepresented communities, and a lot of us from outside of California. So we need to be intentional about creating those relationships, but also a way to recruit more house staff of color and serve the communities in LA that we're most closely linked to. And so being a part of that organization has been great so far, and I intend to get even more involved, with time.
That's awesome to hear. So speaking of mentorship and advice, one aspect of being a physician is, I believe, having some sort of financial literacy. And I'm going to be very honest in saying that I had no idea what that was. I still am not even a beginner, but below that, whatever level that is, when it comes to financial literacy, it's actually very sad. So I want to know, were you given any advice on just kind of keeping your money right while in residency or in medical school? And can you share that advice with us that are struggling?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I'm not an expert by any means either, but it's something I care a lot about. Is financial wellness at every stage, even as a medical student, when all you got is loans, and as a resident, when you're making money but not the real money. You know what I'm saying? So, but just really always try to minimize my loans while I was in med school. I took enough that allowed me to pay for everything and live comfortably, but at the same time, not balling out. I wasn't going to the Louis store with my loan check and buying up everything. So I would say definitely don't think that you have to struggle, but definitely live within your means. I think that is just one of the best financial literacy tips, is always live within your means. Don't try and show off just because, right? Mm-hmm. So doing that, but also we had a transition to residency course when I was a fourth year med student that tried to prepare us about stuff like that. You're about to be a resident now, you're going to be finally making some money. Here's what you should be doing with it. Right. Number one rule, once again, live within your means, right? But also protect your investment. As a physician, your biggest asset is yourself, your mind and your body, right? So you want to protect that. So things I did, literally as soon as I started residency, was I got disability insurance and I got life insurance. Because I'm I need to protect my investment. If I can't work anymore, I need to still be able to get some income. And God forbid anything happens to me, all the people that I need to take care of, still need to be provided for too. And I know, especially within the Black community, a lot of us don't talk about life insurance because a lot of us don't like talking about death. It's kind of taboo. But we need to talk about it because you don't want it to be too late, right? So Those are two things that I made sure I had to do, and I invest, every month with that. But also, like, you don't have to be on the stock market, buying up the block, trading, if you don't really have the time, the capacity or the desire to do that. But it is good to put some money away. As a resident, if you're at, a good program, they should be investing some of your check into, like, a 403B or, some type of investment account. So you're already accruing money that way. And if you have some extra money, some extra disposable income, then definitely, have a Roth IRA and invest, some money into there while you're in residency. So that's building up too. And these are two ways that you're amassing wealth, without really thinking too hard about it. And then if you got your investment account through work, you got your personal Roth IRA, and you still got some cash because you're just really good with your budget and saving, then make sure you have a high interest savings account, right?
Right.
A lot of our savings accounts don't do anything for us. It's just a place for your money to sit. Might as well be under the mattress. But if you have a high interest savings account, even though it's not going to grow as quickly as if you had it in an investment account, it's still going to gain interest, and you'll be able to build up, like, a little nest egg, a little, like, emergency fund with some of that extra cash, right? So I would say those are just some easy things that everybody can do as a resident to be financially well. And one thing I didn't talk about is, paying back your loans. A lot of us, that's a big deal. So big that often kind of like affects what specialty we choose. And so really good to, like, talk to some loan advisors. A lot of them are free through the AAMC. Go to one of those webinars about paying back your loans. Take notes and listen on how to do income-based repayment. So sometimes you can have a payment amount as low as $0 a month, and pay back at your pace. Don't worry about it. Don't let it cause you anxiety about paying it back as quickly as possible. Just go at your pace and know that over time you'll be all right.
Ooh, those are some gems. I definitely took copious mental notes. Thank you for sharing all of that. Okay, so winding down this interview, a couple more questions. So one of them is, now that you are a resident, and I mean, you've been a resident, I guess 7 months now, which
7, yeah.
That's a big deal. So I want to know, like, how has the transition from being a medical student to a full-on resident, how has that transition been?
It's wild. It's wild. And that's a super relevant question, because yesterday was one of those moments like, wow, I'm really in residency right now. I'm no longer a student. I gave, like, my first lecture to medical students. Like, I had medical students rotate with me, but, like, this was the first time where it's like, yo, Preston, we need you to give this lecture to some third years. They're taking their shelf next week. It's going to be on substance use disorders. Like, you want to do it? And I was like, for sure. Like, let's get it. I'm here.
Yes.
And it was just like, wow, literally 2 years ago, I was preparing for my psychiatry shelf and, having had these lectures. And so I think really the mindset shift of, like, yo, now I'm really the doctor. Like, for real. Those orders I put in, they mean something. Yeah. Like, no one's double checking that. You have to double check it and make sure you're doing the right thing. Of course, you have attendings to guide you, but it's really that mental shift of, I am this person's doctor, and the responsibility and the privileges that come with that. And once you really flip that switch and start thinking like that, I think it becomes easier. Learning a new hospital system or a new EMR is, of course, going to come with its own growing pains. But, with time and experience, you'll master that, and, you won't really think twice about it. But yeah, I think also just being intentional about community. I'm lucky that, a lot of my co-residents and we get along well. So I made instant friends that way. But being a physician, or just being, like, in the workforce in general, is different than being in school. It's harder to make friends. It's harder to really have those social connections. You have to be very intentional about it. And you should, because it's important, and it helps get through, residency, which is a tough but fulfilling, experience.
Yeah. And piggybacking off of that question, what are some aspects of residency that surprised you that you really love?
that surprised me that I really love. Really, like, low key, doctors are like very, very many, not like celebrities, but low key like role models. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, just literally people will know nothing about me other than the fact that like I'm a physician, and they'll like, be like, okay. Like, they looking at you like, all right, I see you, especially when you're black, because they don't see a lot of black doctors. Like,
Yes.
oh, you're a doctor? Like, almost every day, like, I'll introduce myself, or tell a patient like I'm their doctor, and they give me a look of like, you can see that look like, wow, I'm proud of you. Especially your black patients, like
Yeah.
they just let you know like you doing the thing. I'm proud of you. Keep it up. Like, you got us. You got our support, and like that feeling coming from complete strangers, that sense of praise, is amazing. And so whenever it happens, it just feels really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I love hearing that. Okay. So last question of this interview. As humans, we are constantly evolving into like better versions of ourselves, stepping into the stronger, more tenacious versions of ourselves, I would say. So, in your journey and in throughout your evolvement, I should say, is there anything that you would have done differently in your journey?
I'm tempted to say oh no, I'm not going to do anything differently because it all made me to where I am today. And though that is the case, I definitely would do some things differently just because it makes it easier for yourself. Like,
Yeah.
um, I think one thing I would have done is, well, I think one thing that I would really encourage everybody to do is give yourself a lot of grace. I feel like, as medical students, who are first generation or come from communities where we don't know doctors, and we're high achieving, right? So we push ourselves from an early age. We can be very hard on ourselves, and we can sell ourselves short. And when we're doing well, we think we're not doing enough, or we should be doing more. We should be going harder. And sometimes we got to take a step back and be like, no, you're doing amazing. Like, you're actually doing really well. And even when we do make mistakes, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean it's because you didn't work hard enough. Sometimes you give it your all and you still fall short, or things just don't work out. But what's important is to learn from that and learn how, you're going to do things differently the next time. And I think especially as doctors, it's a calling where it's all about service, right? You give so much to your patients, so much to the field. You do research, you do all these other things, and you have to remind yourself you got to give back to yourself too, because I would say, though, yes, medicine is great. I love what I'm doing. I think I'm doing what I was meant to do. Medicine is also one of those fields that it takes, and it'll take everything you're willing to give it.
Mhm.
So you got to make sure that it doesn't take everything, and keep things for yourself and take care of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for those words of edification. That's what I'll say. I'm really grateful that you took the time to just speak with us and just share your journey. I know that residency is busy, so I appreciate you taking the time. So I just want to take a second to honor you, say thank you. And real quick before you leave, where can everybody find you on social media? What are your tags?
So yeah, for sure. My tags are on Twitter, Preston Igwe MD, and on Instagram, presto.md. My Twitter is definitely more of like where you can see a lot about like, my day-to-day residency work and, like the professional stuff. My Insta is a little bit more fun, a little bit more social. A good way for me to keep up with like my friends. And so yeah, that's where you can find me. And I just want to say thank you, for like having me today and giving me like this platform to talk about my experience, and to maybe, say some things that are going to help other people who are pre-med or in med school or even residents as well. And so I really appreciate it. I always got love for Region 3. And I'm going to see y'all at AMEC.
Yes, for sure, for sure. Thank you. And y'all at the Trifecta, y'all tune in for our subsequent Alumni Spotlight series. There's going to be a lot rolling out, especially during Black History Month, so stay tuned. Thank y'all so much. Bye-bye.